Hey, what is happening, everybody? How are you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic day. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and can you believe it? In my first official week back from my YouTube break, I've made 3 videos in the past week. What the heck is going on? So boy, oh boy, do we have some hot and spicy takes to talk about today. There has been quite a bit going on in the world of Nintendo the past day or so. And this is news that initially I definitely had opinions about and felt sad about, but I never foresaw it becoming as big of a deal as it seems to have become. It's pretty crazy. So what we're talking about is that this week, on Tuesday, February 15th, Nintendo did announce and confirm on Twitter that next year, in March of 2023, so over a year from right now, they will officially be closing down the Nintendo Wii U and 3DS eShops and virtual consoles and all of that stuff. So suddenly all of those fantastic games, you know, whether they're current games for Wii U or 3DS, or they're virtual console games going back to, you know, all of those old platforms, NES, Super NES, Genesis, TurboGrafx, whatever, all those things that were available, Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games even, Nintendo DS games. It's crazy. We're not going to be able to access that stuff on those eShops for the Wii U and the 3DS. Now, if you know me and have been following me for any length of time, then you know that I am somebody who has always, since day one, November 2012, when I picked up my launch day Wii U, I have loved and supported and continue to play and praise the Wii U. Now, I've obviously also acknowledged some of the mistakes that Nintendo made with the marketing, some of the failings of the console. It's not a perfect console. Nintendo did not handle everything perfectly without question. There are issues to discuss. But on the whole, I think that every console has some kind of issues, and every manufacturer makes mistakes throughout the life of any of its front-facing home consoles at any given time. And the Wii U is no different. Maybe some of those mistakes or issues are bigger than with others, obviously, and as we know, it was not a sales hit, it was a sales failure, which does break my heart. But all of that negative stuff aside, I still love the console. I loved it from day one. I love it right now, today. And as somebody who was doing YouTube as well, running this channel throughout almost all of the Wii U's life, I spent the first 4 years of this channel talking about Wii U news and Wii U games and things about the Wii U that I liked, also criticizing when things needed to be criticized, but in general, I was covering it, and I was a positive supporter and fan and defender of the Wii U. And so to me, as a longtime fan, this news is definitely very sad, because it does signify the end of an era, so to speak, of that really weird, half-successful, half-unsuccessful time period for Nintendo, when the 3DS was killing it on the portable side and the Wii U was failing on the console side. I was just one of those Nintendo fans and game fans who loved all of it, the 3DS and the Wii U. And I was also playing my 360 and my PS3, and then I was playing my Xbox One and my PS4. You know, I'm an equal opportunity gamer. Like, I own and play all the platforms. But as a big Nintendo fan, I spent my time on YouTube talking about the Wii U and Nintendo news during that time. So it is sad to see these things shutting down. And in the wake of this, we're seeing a couple of things pop up. I think there's 2 main issues to talk about here in sort of the aftermath of this initial news, right? And one is people's reactions to it, and the fact that maybe some people who were never genuine fans of the Wii U trying to pretend as if this is something that bothers them, even though they never really supported it or cared about the console at all, and suddenly they're going to use this news to their advantage, which I think is a little bit frustrating as somebody who was supporting it and praising it since day one. And then the other news is the discussion about how Nintendo is handling game preservation. And I think that for sure we can criticize Nintendo on this front. They're probably not handling the game preservation aspect the best, and so that's what I want to dive into a little bit today. Before we dive any deeper into today's topic, I like to remind you guys I'm always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I am currently closing in on 20,000 subscribers, and it would feel so fantastic to hit that in the next couple of months. I upload every single week. I talk about all things Nintendo and all things Metroid and all things gaming. So as you watch this video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel. So where to start with this thing, man? After that kind of long-winded intro and that pseudo rant I feel like I gave there, where do we even jump into this topic, man? I mean, I think some people's reactions is what I want to focus on, because it really is something that frustrates me quite a bit. And it's everything I already said in the intro of this video anyway. I mean, you kind of heard me rant very quickly about my thoughts, you know? And like I said, it sucks that these things are closing down. It is nice that Nintendo is giving us a full year head notice that this is going to be happening, right? They're like, hey, it's March 2023. It's only February 22 right now. We have 13 months to be able to access the Wii U and the 3DS eShop and download and buy anything from the eShop or the virtual consoles that exist. And it's great news that we've got that much time, and it's going to give a lot of people a lot of chances to go and download some great stuff. I even tweeted, as this information just broke, that you can buy almost every single Metroid game that actually I think you can buy every single Metroid game that has ever been made or released between the Wii U and the 3DS. Every single game except for Metroid Dread is available between those two consoles to buy, not to access for a monthly or an annual subscription that goes away once you stop paying for it. You can purchase and own digitally forever on that hardware every single game in the Metroid franchise, amongst so many other great games, and that's a really fantastic thing. But here's the other side of this thing, you guys. Like I said in the beginning here, as somebody who's loved and supported the Wii U, and again, I picked it up on launch day, I waited in line at my local GameStop in the mall that day, and I've told this story before, I actually became sicker than death the day before, and I don't know how I managed to force myself to wake up the next morning and go and grab that console. But honestly, I was so excited. I was taking a week off of work. It's a crazy memory I have of getting so sick I probably should have gone to the hospital, and I lived alone at the time. I wasn't married or even in a relationship. You know, this is 10 years ago. This is 2012, right? And I just got deathly ill. Like, I swear to God, I caught the Black Plague out of nowhere. It hit me in the matter of an hour. I went from completely healthy to just wanting to die. And this was the night before the Wii U launched. And I knew when I drove home from work early that day, and I managed to make it home, and I was just crawling around my living room and throwing up and just like, I want to die. I was still in the back of my brain telling myself, you must live. Go buy Wii U tomorrow. Like, I was really excited about that. And I didn't know how I was going to handle it. And, I ended up going and buying my Wii U. And I spent that first week sicker than death, but still enjoying Zombie U and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 on my Wii U in that opening week. And I loved it. And like I said, within that first year, I also started Rule of Two Review. I started my channel. And so, like I said, I spent the first 4 years of Rule of Two Review, yes, covering PS4 and Xbox One stuff, but 95% of my conversations and content, and the Juices Loose podcast I spent a couple of years on as well, myself and some of my other YouTube friends, we were all talking about and loving the Wii U as a console. And of course the 3DS, which was a great kick-ass portable at the time as well. And so as somebody who's has that relationship and that history with the Wii U, and has been a fan, and to this day still turns it on every once in a while to play some Wii U games or some Wii games, it's really frustrating to see a lot of people, some of who I know and some of who I don't know, most of them are people I don't actually know, but I've seen throughout the years, who I know did not like the Wii U, constantly talked bad about it, constantly bashed it, constantly made fun of it just because it was cooler, quote unquote, to make fun of it than it was to see the positives and talk about the good stuff and play the good games that were releasing on it. Suddenly, these people are acting upset or sad or offended that Nintendo would be shutting this stuff down and that they're effectively finally killing the Wii U and the 3DS. And it's like, you guys, where were you 5, 6, 7 years ago when the Wii U was still around? And yes, it wasn't selling well, but Nintendo was still releasing really excellent games regularly, most of which you guys are also gobbling up on the Switch, by the way, now. Where were you guys 7 years ago when Nintendo was trying to tell people, hey, the Wii U is a really good console? And myself and a small collection of other people were out here on Twitter and YouTube saying, hey, this is a great game, this is a great game, this is a great game. Like, the Wii U has its problems, Nintendo is making its mistakes, but here are the other good things happening, and here are the reasons you should buy and support and own this console. And so many people never did, and a lot of those same people are now suddenly complaining on Twitter or on YouTube, on their YouTube channels, getting into that algorithm, talking about why they're so upset and Nintendo is screwing over the gamer by shutting down the Wii U eShop and the Virtual Console. And it's like, man, get out of here, dude. You weren't even around when so many of us were telling you the Wii U actually was a good console. So I don't want to like gatekeep and say that you don't have the right to say what you're saying or feel how you feel. That's not really the right thing for me to do, but I do think it's at least worth calling people out who seem to be faking their rage and how offended they seem to be when they missed their chance to actually support this console when it was around. I mean, am I crazy or off base here? You guys can let me know how you feel and if you agree with me or not. I mean, this is how I feel, so I'm putting this out there and I'm not gonna like change it or edit it or whatever. Like, these are my opinions, but I want to just understand, I guess. I want to hear from you guys if what I'm saying makes sense and resonates with you, if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it. Maybe you've always hated the Wii U, so you just don't even care about this at all. But, man, maybe I just have a little bit too personal of an attachment to this whole conversation simply because I'm one of the few YouTubers who exist nowadays with a, somewhat of an audience who was also around doing the same thing before the Switch boom. You have to remember, so many big YouTubers now who are gaming YouTubers or Nintendo-focused YouTubers or whatever, so many gaming YouTubers showed up on YouTube after what I call the Nintendo Switch boom, right? Because suddenly the Switch was cool, Nintendo was cool again, YouTube was taking off, and a lot of people who weren't doing bupkis on YouTube or talking about Nintendo or the Wii U showed up when it was quote-unquote cool to talk about Nintendo. And most of them, it's sad for me to admit this, most of them have blown up and shot right past me. And that's okay, because I don't do this full time, and so it's okay. But I just think it's funny how people showed up during the Switch boom. But I'm one of the people who was around for 5 years before the Switch boom ever happened and existed. And I love the Switch. I'm not saying anything negative about the Switch. I talk about it all the time. I freaking love the Switch. But I was putting in the work, talking about Nintendo, good and bad. I would also hold their feet to the fire when need be. But also talking about the Wii U and the good stuff for years before that happened. And all these people who weren't around because it wasn't cool to do so, and they were just making fun of the Wii U because that was the easy, low-hanging fruit, suddenly acting, turning about face and saying, oh, this is a problem. How dare you, Nintendo? I'm so upset. This is bad for the gamers. And it's like, bro, you missed your chance, man. I don't know. It doesn't seem genuine, right? It seems a little fake, and it seems like people are being fake, and it just really... It bothers me because I was around years before then, and there were other YouTubers as well who were around years before then. Like I said, all of the Juices Loose podcast crew and Player Essence and RGT, those are some people who I know personally, and Super Metal Dave as well. Most other people showed up after the Switch, and so why are you complaining about the Wii U now when you didn't care about it at the time? It just... I don't know, man. It just really bothers me. Now, the other conversation here is the game's preservation aspect. And so if we get away from how people are reacting to this and if they're right or wrong and any of that drama I just spent like 10 minutes yelling about to you guys, the other aspect is the game preservation situation. And if Nintendo is making a different kind of mistake by shutting this stuff down and not allowing people to continue to access more or less the virtual console games, like the downloadable games that are Wii U games or 3DS games, that's a different story because 95% of those games you can also just buy physically anyway. And so the physical collection for those platforms will still exist, and that's fine. Just buy your frickin' games physically. You don't need to download all of your games. But when it comes to accessing virtual consoles for the Wii U and 3DS, NES, Super NES, Genesis, Game Boy Advance, DS, TurboGrafx, all these things I listed, that's where there's a little bit more of a conversation to be had, and I think that we know Nintendo hasn't always been the best at games preservation. I think the best they ever have been at it was, releasing the NES and SNES mini consoles. Those are great little collectible things. They weren't a lot of money, and you get a ton of great value and games you can play, with an HDMI on an HD TV. And those are awesome little collectibles with a great library of games. And then, of course, just creating the virtual console for the Wii that then carried over to the Wii U and the 3DS, those 3 virtual consoles and their incredible library, those were great examples of Nintendo, in most ways, being pro game preservation. And, some people will say they'd rather emulate for free than pay $5 to $10 a pop to own them on the platform. That's whatever. I don't know how to emulate. I don't do that stuff. I'm not tech savvy enough to even go in that territory. To me, I like the official company making things available officially. Microsoft and Sony have different levels of doing it well, but also doing it poorly as well. So it's, everyone's got their own versions of it. But Nintendo's library and lineage also goes back way before Sony and Microsoft's in the gaming space. And so it would be nice if Nintendo made it easier to access these things. I think that as we see Nintendo shut down the last true virtual consoles next year for these two platforms, we're seeing people start to realize how the current Nintendo Switch Online setup with the rotating NES and Super NES and 64 games and stuff doesn't really compare or hold a candle to a true virtual console storefront. And I've said that many times over the years. I even made a video about it a couple of months ago. After the N64 stuff and the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack was revealed, I talked about how the storefront was definitely not as lucrative for Nintendo, but was way more pro-consumer and way more pro-games preservation than what they're doing with the rotating monthly service or yearly service thing they're doing with the Switch Online. I don't love the Switch Online's version of accessing old games. I would rather every game they have available through Switch Online just be available to buy and download to my Switch for a one-time purchase of a couple of bucks. Now that's just my opinion, not everyone will agree, and that's okay, but that's how I feel about it, and so that's why I think that Nintendo's choice to do this hurts for different reasons than the complaints I had in the beginning about how people are faking being upset about the Wii U stuff. I think it hurts and is a mistake because it does damage the way people view their ability to preserve some of these classic games. You know, that's become one of the biggest talking points in the modern era of video games is how do we preserve games from 20 years ago, and how do we make sure games that are releasing today will themselves be preserved in 20 years. As things shift more digital, in many ways it becomes easier to preserve games because you can make them available digitally. Even though I'm a physical guy and I like collecting stuff and I like going out to retro shops to buy obscure Atari Jaguar games or getting on eBay and buying obscure Atari Jaguar games, and I'm going to probably start for my Sega Saturn soon as well. I have a Virtual Boy. I'd like to get all of those games as well. So those you do physical, but stuff that Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft have made digital already, the digital aspect, it's one of the few places where I can say it's a pro for the digital side because it makes that preservation easier. We're seeing Nintendo kind of, build a wall between the preservation of their older games and the fact that they would rather just have people spend $20 to $50 a year, year over year over year, to just have temporary access to their older games or even the DLC for games like Mario Kart and Animal Crossing, so that they can almost punish you if you stop paying year over year. And suddenly you won't have access to NES and SNES and N64 games on your Switch anymore because you stopped paying Nintendo regular money. And personally, I'm not a fan of that business model. I can deal with it. It doesn't keep me up at night, and I'm choosing not to pay for it currently, but I don't think it's as pro-consumer as what they've done in the past. And so from that perspective, I think it's a big mistake for Nintendo to shut this stuff down now without something else already in place to replace it. And so I don't know, man. I've obviously got a lot of feelings here. This was a little bit of a ranty video. I clearly had some passionate opinions about this whole topic. But it's everything I said at the beginning, and it's born out of the fact that I've loved the Wii U forever, and I spent 4 years, with my personality and my channel and my quote-unquote brand, if you want to call it, for my small little YouTube channel, even though I don't think I would really use the word brand, but you guys know what I mean. Everything I did on YouTube for 4 years was about the Wii U, and yes, talking about the mistakes, but also talking about why I loved the console. And again, I still turn it on and play it to this day. I'm not going to sell my Wii U. So people who never supported it or never even owned one, having the gall to pretend to be upset about this or have any sort of opinions about the Wii U at all, I mean, it's everyone's right to do so as adults, but I can just smell the BS, right? I think we can all smell the bullshit. And it just bothers me from a principle perspective. Like, where's your principle? Where are your morals? What do you even stand for if you can't be consistent with how you felt 7 years ago, just because now you want to get more likes on your tweets or you want to get more views on your YouTube videos? It just bothers me, man, and it exposes some different issues with how some people go about things. But whatever, you know what? I'm not the YouTube police, man. I don't want to pretend to be the YouTube police. I'm just sharing with you guys how I see things playing out. And I feel pretty good about, I think, how I have dissected what we see going on with some people and the opinions they're sharing. So either way, This is how I feel about all of this stuff. Nintendo's mistakes on game preservation, people's mistakes on their Wii U opinions, or whatever the case. Talk about how you feel below, and with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.